When I first saw the ultrasound picture, I thought it was mine. Same black and white blur. Same tiny heartbeat shape. Same timestamp format. But it wasn't. It was someone else's baby carrying my husband's name on the file label. My name is Evelyn Hart. And until that moment, I believed my husband, Lucas, had changed. We were supposed to be starting over a fresh chapter as parents. A family built on forgiveness and second chances. But that single image on his phone shattered every illusion I'd been desperately holding on to. I remember exactly where I was sitting cross-legged on the nursery rug, folding tiny onesies that still smelled faintly of lavender detergent and hope. The baby monitor hummed softly beside me, a white noise machine disguising the rhythm of my restless thoughts. Lucas had left his phone charging on the dresser while he ran out for milk. I wasn't snooping. I was just tired, half-dazed, scrolling through my own messages on the shared device we used for the baby's photo app. Then, a notification popped up. A woman's name I didn't recognize. A heart emoji, and a preview that said, "He's growing so fast, Daddy." I froze. My hands trembled as I tapped the screen, my heart already knowing before my mind could accept it. The message opened, and there it was. A sonogram dated only 3 weeks ago. A second baby. Not Mine. Before I ever became the woman sobbing on that nursery floor, I was a hopeful bride in a lace dress, laughing under a paper lantern sky. Lucas had been my college sweetheart, the kind of man who could charm an entire room without trying. He was warm, spontaneous, the life of every party. I was steadier, more reserved, the planner, the one who remembered birthdays, paid bills, packed snacks. Together, we were balance. Or at least that's what I told myself. Our early years were beautiful, simple. We lived in a small apartment downtown, filled with secondhand furniture and late-night takeout boxes. We'd dance barefoot in the kitchen to Fleetwood Mac, pretending the world was ours. But somewhere between student loans, job stress, and miscarried dreams, cracks began to form, small, silent ones that neither of us wanted to admit. When I got pregnant again last year, I thought it was our miracle. Lucas cried at the first ultrasound. He held my hand through morning sickness. He promised me, over and over, "This time, I'm not going anywhere." I believed him. After our daughter, Ivy, was born, I saw glimpses of the man I'd fallen in love with. He sang her lullabies, made midnight bottle runs, and built a crib with his own hands, crooked but full of love. For the first time in years, I thought we might be okay. But people don't change overnight. They just learn to hide their storms better. Looking back, the signs were there, small shifts that only make sense in hindsight. The sudden business trips, the late-night showers, the way he started guarding his phone like it held state secrets. He said he was exhausted from work, but I could feel the distance like a chill in the bed between us. Still, I kept trying, because that's what good wives do, right? We forgive, we hope, we build new foundations over old ruins, and call it growth. The night before Mother's Day, I stayed up wrapping a tiny handprint kit I'd made with Ivy. I'd painted the edges pink and wrote, "For Daddy, our first family memory," in cursive across the top. I wanted it to remind him of what we were fighting for. That's what made the discovery sting even more, that I was trying to hold us together while he was building a family somewhere else. I sat there, staring at that ultrasound, until my vision blurred. My chest felt tight, like the air had been sucked out of the room. I could hear Ivy stirring softly through the monitor, her little sighs mixing with the hum of the white noise. My tears fell on her folded onesies, the ones I had imagined she'd one day pass down to a little sister. When Lucas came home an hour later, carrying a carton of milk, and the same easy smile that used to melt me, I felt something inside me snap. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just stood there, holding his phone out to him like a weapon made of truth. "Who is she?" I whispered. He froze, eyes darting from the screen to my face. For a second, I saw something flicker. Guilt, fear, maybe even relief. He didn't deny it. That silence was worse than any confession. "Evie, it's not what you think," he started, his voice trembling slightly. I laughed, bitter and broken. "Not what I think? That's another woman's baby, Lucas. And she's calling you Daddy. How am I supposed to think?" He took a step toward me, but I backed away, clutching the phone to my chest like it was my last piece of sanity. "You promised me we'd start over," I said quietly. "You promised me we'd be a family." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "It happened before Ivy. Before I knew if we were even Tass anymore. I thought she was gone, Evelyn. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." There it was, the classic coward's line. I didn't mean for this to happen, as if betrayal ever happens by accident. I stared at him for a long moment, my tears drying into something colder. I thought about the promises he made in the hospital, the late-night confessions about being a better man. I thought about Ivy, sleeping peacefully in her crib, unaware that her father had just broken the family she'd been born into. "Get out!" I whispered. He hesitated, as if he might convince me to listen, to understand. But the look in my eyes must have told him everything he needed to know. He grabbed his jacket, keys, and quietly shut the door behind him. And just like that, the silence in our home became unbearable. That night, I rocked Ivy to sleep and whispered apologies she could never understand. I kept telling her that none of this was her fault, that love was supposed to be safe, even though I no longer believed it myself. But somewhere between those tears and that sleepless dawn, a seed of something new began to grow inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet. Strength, the quiet, trembling kind that only comes when you've lost everything you thought you couldn't live without. And that was the night I decided I would no longer be the woman begging to be chosen. Because my daughter deserved a mother who chose herself first. The next morning was Mother's Day. I woke up to the faint sound of Ivy cooing through the monitor, her small, sleepy noises that used to melt my heart. But that morning, they just reminded me of everything broken. The sunlight creeping through the blinds felt cruelly ordinary. The kind that used to mean pancakes and kisses and laughter in the kitchen. I used to love Mother's Day. The idea of being celebrated, of being seen. But now, every sound, every smell, every heartbeat in the house felt hollow. I made Ivy's bottle in silence, letting the rhythmic hum of the coffee maker fill the air where Lucas's voice used to be. The house smelled like baby powder and loneliness. His mug was still on the counter, half a ring of dried coffee marking where he'd stood yesterday. I should have thrown it out. Instead, I just stared at it, because part of me still wanted to believe he'd walk through that door, apologize, beg, promise again. But he didn't. By noon, I had managed to convince myself that I could survive the day. I'd even planned to take Ivy to the park, just to escape the walls that still echoed his name. That's when my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. "I think we should talk. You deserve to know the truth." No name. No context. Just that. For a second, I considered ignoring it. God knows I'd had enough truth for a lifetime. But something in me needed to see it through. Maybe it was morbid curiosity. Maybe it was closure. So I replied, "Who is this?" A few seconds later, a typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, a message. "My name is Celeste. I'm the woman in the ultrasound." My stomach dropped. The world blurred again. I didn't answer at first. I just sat there, frozen, staring at the name. Celeste. It sounded so soft, so delicate, like the kind of woman Lucas would have fallen for when he thought I'd stopped being fun. I finally typed, "What do you want from me?" Her reply came quickly. "To tell you what he didn't. Please. I didn't know about you until recently. We met 2 days later, at a quiet cafe near the river, one of those places with chipped mugs and old jazz, playing too softly. I almost didn't go. My mother told me not to. My best friend said it would only hurt more. But I had to look the woman in the eye who carried the second heartbeat tied to my husband's lies. She was younger than me. Late 20s, maybe. Honey-colored hair tied loosely, nervous fingers tapping the handle of her coffee cup. When she saw me walk in, her eyes softened, almost apologetic. "Evelyn?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Celeste." We sat down across from each other, the air between us thick with things neither of us knew how to say. She spoke first. "I didn't know he was married. Not until after I got pregnant. He told me you'd separated, that you were just co-parenting." Her voice cracked slightly on the word pregnant. She wasn't defensive. She looked scared. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. My hands clasped tightly around my mug, the heat grounding me in a reality I still didn't want. She continued, "When I found out, I told him I wanted to tell you. He begged me not to, said it would destroy his family. I thought he was protecting you, but really, he was protecting himself." I stared at her, this woman who'd unknowingly been living the same lie as me. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded envelope. "This is for you," she said softly. Inside was a letter, Lucas's handwriting. "Evie," it began, "if you're reading this, it means everything has fallen apart. I never wanted to hurt you. You and Ivy are my world, but I made mistakes I can't undo. I tried to be the man you needed, but part of me was already broken. Celeste was a mistake that became something I couldn't walk away from, because there's a child involved. I don't expect you to forgive me, but please, Don't hate me in front of Ivy. She deserves better than that. I'll fix this. I'll find a way. It wasn't an apology. It was a plea. And yet, somehow, reading it made the rage settle into something quieter. Not forgiveness, just exhaustion. When I looked back up, Celeste was crying. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't want to be part of this. I believed her. Because her eyes weren't the eyes of a woman who'd won. They were the eyes of someone who'd lost the same man, in a different way. So I told her the only truth that mattered. You're not the enemy. He is. In the weeks that followed, Lucas tried to reach out. Texts, voicemails, apologies that sounded rehearsed. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I filed for separation. Not out of spite, but survival. I started therapy. I went back to work part-time. I even took Ivy to a mommy and me class where no one knew my story, where I could just be a mom. Not the woman whose husband fathered 2 babies in 1 year. But healing isn't linear. There were nights when I'd wake up reaching for him, only to remember why his side of the bed was cold. Days when I'd hear Ivy giggle and wonder if his other child sounded the same. I hated that I thought about them. I hated that his betrayal had tied us all together in a web none of us asked for. One afternoon, I was picking Ivy up from daycare when I saw him, standing by his car across the street, holding a small teddy bear. He looked thinner, tired. Not the man I'd once known, just the ghost of him. He caught my eye and gave a small, hesitant wave. I didn't wave back. But for the first time, I didn't cry either, because I realized something. Love can't save a person who doesn't want to be saved. And I wasn't going to waste my life trying to fix someone who had chosen to destroy ours. That night, I tucked Ivy in and whispered, "You and me, baby. That's enough." Her tiny hand curled around my finger, and in that moment, I finally felt at peace. Not the kind that forgets, but the kind that lets go. The first court hearing was on a Wednesday. I remember because Ivy wore her yellow dress, the one with the tiny daisies, and I told myself it was a sign of sunshine after the storm. But as I stood in that cold courthouse hallway, clutching my lawyer's folder and pretending my heart wasn't racing, I realized that healing isn't poetic. It's procedural. Lucas showed up late. He looked nervous, but well-dressed, like a man who still thought he could charm his way out of anything. His tie was crooked, though a small, satisfying detail that felt like the universe's subtle revenge. He smiled faintly when he saw me. "Evie," he said softly, as if we were old friends meeting for coffee. I didn't answer. I just looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the man I loved, but the man who'd lied through every breath we shared. The hearing was simple. Custody terms, temporary visitation, financial support. But every word felt like salt on an open wound. Hearing Ivy's name in legal language, the child, shared custody, primary caregiver, broke something inside me. At one point, the judge looked at me and asked, "Do you believe Mr. Kent is fit to co-parent?" I could have unloaded every betrayal, every sleepless night, every moment of fear. Instead, I said calmly, "I believe he's capable of being a father. I just don't trust him as a husband." There was a pause. Even Lucas seemed taken aback by the restraint in my voice. But dignity was the only weapon I had left. After the hearing, he followed me outside. "Evie, please," he said, stepping into my path. "You're making it worse than it has to be." I stopped. "Worse?" "Lucas, you made it worse when you decided our baby wasn't enough." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I made a mistake, okay? I didn't plan any of this. Celeste, it happened." The way he said her name soft, careful, sent a chill through me. "And what about Ivy? Did she just happen to?" He flinched. "You know I love her." "No," I said quietly. "You love yourself. And that's the problem." For a moment, the world fell silent. No cars, no chatter. Just the two of us standing in the wreckage of what used to be a marriage. Then I turned and walked away. And this time, I didn't look back. The weeks after the hearing felt strangely light, not easy, but lighter, as if grief had shifted its shape from an ocean to a river. Still flowing, but no longer drowning me. I started journaling again, cooking meals just for me, not to impress anyone. I learned how to fix the leaky faucet Lucas always said he'd get around to. I even started painting, something I hadn't done since college late nights at the kitchen table, brushes in hand, while Ivy slept peacefully in her crib. One evening, my mother came over with dinner. She watched me paint for a while before saying, "You seem more you." I smiled faintly. "I think I'm remembering who that is." She reached out and touched my hand. "You were never lost, Evelyn. Just buried under someone else's promises." That night, after she left, I stood by Ivy's crib and whispered, I'll never let anyone bury me again. A few months later, Celeste called. I hadn't heard from her since the cafe. I hesitated before answering, unsure if I was ready to reopen that wound. Hi, she said softly. I just thought you should know. I had the baby. A boy. His name is Noah. I froze. There was so much I could have said. Anger, sadness, empathy. But what came out instead was simple. Congratulations. She hesitated. I know it's weird hearing this from me, but he talks about you, Evelyn. A lot. He says he ruined everything. A bitter laugh escaped me. That's the first honest thing he's said in years. Ceres sighed. I just wanted you to know. I left him. I realized I couldn't raise my son, watching him repeat the same mistakes. For the first time, I felt something unexpected. Not resentment, but relief. Relief that someone else had broken free of his orbit too. Good for you, I said. We both deserve better. We hung up, and I sat there for a long time, just listening to the sound of Ivy's laughter from the other room, high and pure and untouched by adult chaos. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt free. The following Mother's Day, exactly 1 year after the discovery, I woke up to Ivy climbing into my bed, clutching a crayon-colored card. Happy Mama Day, she said proudly, her tiny voice melting every scar inside me. The card was messy and uneven, covered in hearts and stick figures, me, her, and the sun smiling above us. No father in sight, just us two. Tears welled in my eyes, but not from pain this time, from peace, from gratitude. Thank you, my love, I whispered, hugging her tightly. We spent the day at the park. The air was warm, the scent of lilacs everywhere. Watching Ivy run across the grass, hair wild in the wind, I realized something beautiful. Love isn't defined by who stays. It's defined by who shows up every single day, even when the world has fallen apart. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, I took Ivy's hand and whispered, You know, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. She giggled. I know, Mama. I laughed through my tears. Of course you do. And right there, under the fading gold sky, I made myself a promise to raise her, in a world built not on lies, but on truth, courage, and love that doesn't break when tested. Soft piano music fades in. The camera lingers on Evelyn, and Ivy walking through the park, golden light, laughter in the air. Sometimes, love doesn't end with fireworks or fury. Sometimes, it just unravels quietly thread by thread until you're left holding the fabric of what you thought was forever. Evelyn gave her whole heart to a man who promised her family, her safety, her future. But when those promises crumbled, she learned something even more powerful, that her worth was never his to define. You see, betrayal doesn't just destroy trust. It forces you to rebuild your identity from the ashes. And that's what Evelyn did. Slowly, gently, with grace. She stopped asking, why wasn't I enough? And started saying, I am enough even without him. There's something sacred about a woman who chooses to start over when life has broken her open. She learns that peace doesn't come from being loved perfectly. It comes from learning to love yourself in the aftermath of imperfection. And as for little Ivy, she'll grow up knowing that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. I made it through. Soft pause. The screen shows Evelyn watching Ivy blow bubbles into the sunset. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've seen a promise fall apart in your hands and wondered if you'd ever smile again. If you have, I want you to remember this. Healing isn't about forgetting what happened, it's about remembering who you are beyond the hurt. Because one day, when you least expect it, you'll wake up and realize that peace isn't something you find in someone else's arms. It's something you build with your own 2 hands. Music swells. Fade to black. Sometimes the hardest goodbye becomes the beginning of your peace.